Hello, welcome back to talking about our simulation. I know it's been a long time. We're going to be talking about 2020, the year of chaos, which is this year. We're going to be talking about why the simulation has chose 2020 as the year of chaos. I'm just going to go through a few things and have a little story time. Alright, back many years ago in the early 1900s, around 1919, there's an avant-garde art movement called the Dada movement. And according to Wikipedia, it says this started in the early 20th century with early centers in Zurich, Switzerland at the Cabaret Voltaire. Circa 1916, New York Dada began circa 1915, and after 1920, Dada flourished in Paris. Developed in reaction to World War I, the Dada movement consisted of artists who rejected the logic, reason, and aestheticism of modern capitalist society, instead expressing nonsense, irrationality, and anti-bourgeois protest in their works. The art of the movement spanned visual, literal, and sound media, including collage, sound, poetry, cut-up writing, and sculpture. Dadaist artists expressed their discontent towards violence, war, nationalism, and maintained political affinities with radical left and far left politics. Alright, that was 1916 to 1920. And then go a little further. There's something called the Principia of Discordia. If read literally, it encourages the worship of the Greek goddess Eris, known in Latin as Discordia, the goddess of disorder, or archetypes and ideals associated with her. Depending on the version of Discordianism, Eris might be considered the goddess of inclusivity, of disorder, or the goddess of disorder and chaos. Both views are supported by Principia Discordia. The Principia Discordia holds three core principles: the anaristic order, the eristic disorder, and the notion that both are mere illusions. Due to these principles, a Discordian believes there is no distinction between order and disorder, since they are both man-made conceptual divisions of the pure element of chaos. Alright. So, how does this tie into our simulation? Alright, it takes a long time to shape a simulation, and chaos has gone mainstream 2020, okay? There's many things that are connected through history, and there's certain threads that connect a lot of them, okay? And I'm going to be talking about a cult you might not have heard of before, but it's a very quiet cult. You might not have heard about it before, but you can look it up yourself. It's the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Alright, and we're into it. So, when I was a kid, I was about 15 years old. I got into a band. I don't know if you've heard of them before. One of my favorite bands of all time. Go out and buy their CDs. Enjoy their music. Skinny Puppy. I was introduced to it about 15 years old. Same night I was introduced to Pigface, Legendary Pink Dots. And I wanted to hear more. So I got into a band called Psychic TV. I got into SPK. I was really into the industrial noise scene. And I wanted to know everything the artist I listened to knew. I wanted to know their reasons behind creating this art. So, just like I said, the Dada art movement, and then later the Discordia, is some of the groundwork that was for the chaos that was implemented and fed into culture for 100 years. So the Dada movement being in 1920, 100 years later, now we have chaos in the streets. Chaos has gone mainstream. Okay, so I listened to this music, and I always wondered what was behind this music. A friend before asked, we talked about music a lot. We talked about pop music, and pop music, top 40 wants you to buy more, be a consumer. There's subliminal messaging in it, or straight up blatant commercialism in pop music. And there has been for many, 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 many years. So, amongst my friends, we've talked about underground music, and what are they getting you to buy with underground music? What are they selling you? What is the true message? And the true message is deprogramming. It's deprogramming people from mainstream society via what they learned 100 years ago with the Dada art movement, and then later with Discordia. So those things were implemented into chaos, and chaos was seeded into culture. It took 100 years to plant this, water it, and see it birthed on the street. Okay, so underground music does also have subliminal messages. It has a message behind it. There is something that's in it, and in that music, it's just like, you listen to it, whether it's, punk or goth or industrial. What are the origins? How did this stuff start? And David Bowie and Velvet Underground apparently started goth music. Industrial music was started by probably Throbbing Gristle, and some say Kraftwerk. But a lot of these bands, as you go through them, and the message is almost very similar from band to band. I mean, are they upkeeping something, or is there something connecting them? And after, putting this through my head several times and talking to a couple friends about it, I found a connection. And I had looked up this connection before, and it all fizzled out. This connection has fizzled out many times. But then I was able to locate more recently information on the Process Church of Final Judgment. So Robert de Gristom started this church in the 60s, I believe it was 1966, with Mary Ann McLean. And it was started in the UK. It says in the 60s, and you can look it up it has a Wikipedia page. And if you scroll down on the Wikipedia page, which I can't do right now, it mentions that there's a couple bands that were applying this, and one is Skinny Puppy, and the other one was Psychic TV. And surprise, surprise, George Clinton, Funkadelic, was also implementing this stuff into some of his early work. And as well, you have the Oyster Cult with Don't Fear the Reaper. And I mean, I'm making my own guess here, but Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, and the rest of the band were in the UK. This was started in 1966. I'm not sure the exact date of the music that came out, the album. But hello, I hope you guessed my name. Okay, so I believe is a satire about Robert de Gristom. So the Rolling Stones, I believe, even made a song about this group called the Process Church of Final Judgment. And today, the Process Church doesn't exist, but you can buy some books on it and whatnot, and I'm going to feed myself and see what's out there. And this group of young people from London, 2 of them had been kicked out or left Scientology. And they started their own deal. And they used some of the things from Scientology, the truth meter, the P meter, to have truth sessions with new attendees and members of their organization. And eventually they went out to the Yucatan, were called via meditation, and after pretty much almost starving to death and being hit by a hurricane and in shambles, they were enlightened with a message, and they came back to America and set up shop and tried to get involved in the scene out here of religion. They made themselves a religion. And there's hints of different people and throughout history that bumped into these people. One of them was Charles Manson, and Process Church pretty much dissolved from the spotlight after the 1969 murders and the trial of Charles Manson for the Tate and LaBianca murders. As far as I know, they have no direct involvement. Charles Manson himself possibly met some people from these groups, and suppose he went to a cafe once, and a lady from the Process Church offered to give him a palm reading, and his reply was, "If you're any good, you could read an egg." So Charles Manson was posturing against the Process Church. He might have been interested in what they're doing, but I don't think in any real way he is linked directly to the Process Church. But it's interesting fanfare and a little bit of nostalgia. So the Process Church got their message. They started producing literature. They had 4 ways of seeing every personality. So any person could be 2 things at one time, being Lucifer, Jehovah, Satan, and Christ. And within those 4 divisions, there was, some people took, like, this one's for me, or this one's for me, and that person, behold, became representative of that mindset within the group, or learned from the group, and then went off to display their mindset. So, and their words for Lucifer, Satan, aren't as bad as the Bible version. So they were far from Satan worshipers. These people did not put on robes and sacrifice goats, okay? These people were break-off group from Scientology. Much more wicked. So it's just a very interesting rabbit hole I have fallen in the last few weeks of self-discovery of the most influential bands in my life. We're all connected via the Process Church of Final Judgment, which, surprise to me, was a branch off from Scientology. So again, underground music, chaos, is connected. So whether it's punk music, industrial, Rage Against the whatever, you are being programmed by one thing or another. You're being programmed as a conformee or a conformist. Do not conform or conform. So just like in South Park, conformist. So the anti-conform crowd, it seemed most likely in the late 60s and 70s and even later on to be all birthing and branching from the Process Church, from my research. These people later on, by the 80s or so, the church had been dissolving, and what happened was that Marianne McLean went to Utah and started a animal rescue business, and it is now called Best Friends Animal Society, I believe, in Utah. She has passed away, I believe, in the 90s. Robert de Gristome is possibly in Italy, the other founding member. I believe him and some other members are trying to get this stuff out before, there's not a chance to possibly cash in on it or renew the message, or see if anybody else wants to continue what they were doing back then in 1966. So it was a very interesting thing, and again, Hollywood just, I don't know if you've ever looked into who's who in Hollywood, but some of these people are super famous. They've been famous all their lives. Their parents were famous. There's Hollywood royal elite, but there's other Hollywood people. You have Joaquin Phoenix, you have River Phoenix, you have Winona Ryder. There's many people in Hollywood that did not come from elitism. They were former cult members, okay? Most of them from California, and I'm not sure. I haven't done enough research to connect which cult from which. Rose McGowan was from a cult as well. Most of these people spent their childhoods within these cults before venturing into Hollywood. Okay, so this is all telling us something. People believe in this or that, or they think there's a political agenda or Illuminati. What we have is the Order of the Golden Fleece that controls the money, and then we have underground groups that are trying to control the population. Okay, this was a starter group that was attempting to, socially engineer the underground, population, the people that were willing to, see what's out there. And it's not Wiccan, it's not pagan. It was a belief system that is very philosophical. So I'm doing what I can to look up more and find more about this subject. But again, it's been hard to find stuff on it for years, and finally, with these people approaching their 80s, the information is starting to flow on the internet, and I will be purchasing some books and going through more on this until I find the bottom of these rabbit holes. And I'm sure I will share that information. If you want to ask me, I probably am still digging. So in the future. And otherwise, if I find a new rabbit hole to go in, I'll venture that one too, and it depends on what I feel like talking about on these videos. But I just thought it was very interesting for those that do listen to underground music, but for the goth or industrial, that the Process Church were the real goths. They started this stuff. They were a branch of Scientology that broke off to form a doomsday cult. And this doomsday cult was pushing chaos and deprogramming from society, non-conformist, don't be a conformist. And this message built into counterculture, which in the 80s and 90s was a big deal, and in the punk music as well. So these things, manifested themselves to a point, I believe, where 2020 underground chaos reached mainstream. I said to myself years ago, you know, oh, it'd be great. Like, I would love it if a band like Skinny Puppy, like, wow, could get on the Tonight Show or be on Saturday Night Live. When is, you know, this deep underground music ever going to be mainstream? It doesn't really matter. What matters is that Chaos did go mainstream this year, 2020.